Happy Tuesday morning, Texas Homer. Paul Wadlington. It is the Tuesday morning show. We're just going to discuss a little bit about Texas being in that elite tier. Are they in that elite tier? Are we going to hang around the rim until we can finally get that national championship? And then Paul did an interesting piece on the future of conferences, how it might affect the Big Ten and the SEC going forward. But mostly, we're going to hang out with you guys. Any questions you guys have, throw them in the chat. We will be answering them. Good morning, AR. Good morning, Elio. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Interesting stuff to talk about. And I don't know if you also saw that Ohio State, they're going to have two brand new coordinators when we play them.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was interesting. Who did they brought up Hartline to OC, right?
I don't know. Is that official or is it going to be a
I don't know if it's official. Maybe it's not official, but it felt like it was. And then who's the DC there? Do they know?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Let's see if Hartline got promoted. No, maybe they're just talking about there's a chance of it. How would you feel about that?
Well, he doesn't have any experience calling plays, but we know he's a great recruiter and developer of wide receivers. I mean, Ohio State's track record at wide receiver is pretty unbeatable.
What do you think Hartline does, though, at some point? If he clearly wants to promote and they're just keeping him, like, what do you do at that point? Do you look for other jobs, or do they give you a candy credit, assistant head coach nonsense?
Well, he's 38. He's actually not been coaching that long. He had a decent NFL career. So the question is, do they feel like this is a guy who's a future OC? Just because you've been a position coach doesn't mean you can call plays, right?
Right.
So I don't know. It really depends on what they perceive him as. I know that he makes I think he has he's the highest paid position coach in college football, isn't he?
Yeah, his draft rate's crazy too. But it's also too, what does he perceive himself as?
Yeah, he could become a head coach without becoming a coordinator. That used to be like you have to be a coordinator to be a head coach.
Yeah.
I think people have expanded their mind to that a little bit if you're enough of a recruiter and an organizer. But I don't know. Maybe this guy's an Ohio State lifer. Maybe he wants to, coach in another team in the Big Ten. I have no. Maybe he wants to hang around and see if Ryan Day persists at Ohio State because he would be a potential successor. So,
yeah,
very interesting question.
Yeah. So we had Chip Kelly go to the Raiders, right?
Chip Kelly with the Raiders, highest paid OC in football, I think, in the NFL. $6 million a year.
That's impressive. And then Jim Knowles over to Penn State. So they have no for sure quarterback. Not saying that saying's not the real deal. We just don't know, right?
You're not saying that?
Yeah, I know. Exactly. I did the pun. So we know no for sure quarterback and two new coordinators.
Someone in the chat says Tom Herman is tanned, rested, and ready.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Absolutely not.
A match made in heaven.
Yeah. I don't know what I think of Herman as just like being a pure OC. Maybe I think that would work better.
Well, they probably have good feelings about him, right? He was their OC for a national title run.
Yeah. And then that weird former Ohio State coordinator, and they went to weird war. That was such a weird period.
The okay, cool, hook 'em.
Yeah.
Legendary spiraling out.
Response.
Yeah, the guy's life was spiraling, and he decided to lash out at everyone around him.
Yep.
And he's like, "We went to gentlemen's clubs together." Tom Herman's like, "Yeah, my wife's cool with it."
Yeah, man. That was such a weird period.
Doesn't care.
Jonte Cook, got arrested in Tarrant County on a theft charge. It's sad, man. It's sad to watch kids self-destruct like that. Hopefully somebody, you can talk sense into him. I don't know how much money he has. That tends to be a barrier to talking sense until he runs out of that. But clearly the kid needs help and is not making the right choices.
NIL is a revealer, right?
Yeah.
That kind of money at that young of an age, if you don't have a good family support structure, if you've got a personality that's a little bit on the far ends of the bell curve, the money is it's an amplifier, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to fundamentally change who you are, but it might expand and grow parts of you that aren't very
positive.
Positive, yeah.
Yeah, I knew. I mean, he's a wide receiver, so you're like, he's always going to have that diva issue. I just didn't know there was this dark side of it. A lot of receivers have this kind of narcissistic trait. But yeah, hopefully somebody can help him out because he's blowing an incredible opportunity here. And he's still young. There's time to turn it around, but man, you can't keep racking up charges. That's for sure. And the NIL money's going to run out too, and you're going to be in a tough situation. So hopefully somebody will be in his camp and help him out because it went from like, you transferred and then you transferred. It's like, okay, something's up here,
He needs to get within a structure ASAP.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, my thought is like, man, Brennan Marion, go take him, at Sacramento State. You have a history of like a rough pass. You turned it around. I know it's not probably safe culture stuff, but you just want somebody at like a low level to, like you said, to give them be here at 8 a.m., work out at this time. You have to be in class, this kind of stuff. Or else you're going to end up with the other side of structure, which you just saw, which is jail.
Yes.
So it's like, you better pick your structure here because how you're going to have structure. It's just, is the state providing it or is a football team providing it?
I agree. I completely agree.
Elio has already preempted us.
Hey, we're done.
Yeah, we're done.
We don't have to do the segment.
Yeah, we're done. Texas is in the elite tier programs for sure. Every year the draft is getting at least 10 Texas players on their boards. Need to be in the national championship contention this year, in my opinion. Okay, let us begin. I agree. So performance-wise, the only team back-to-back in the playoffs, and not just the 12-team playoff, right? We made it to the 4 again. So that, I think that matters too, context-wise. And then my most important thing is the draft picks. That's where I think you really get into the conversation. So it basically, this is a thinly veiled is Texas back, but it's back in contention, back fighting. If you hang around the rim like a Michigan, like an Ohio State, they hung around for what, 6-7 years kind of, and then you wait for an up roster cycle, and all these teams can reload, but you're still waiting for your best roster cycle of those reloads, right? And then also too, it helps if Georgia's kind of down that year or whatever. But if you hang around the rim, you're going to get through eventually. And that's what we've kind of seen that I think is interesting. Notre Dame's been doing that. They've been able to get over the hump, but they've been hanging around. So how do you feel, Paul? Is Texas in that tier officially?
They are.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a short list, and Texas is in it, and it happened fast. I mean,
it did.
It's crazy. I mean, 2021, we were a bad football team.
Yes.
2022, they were pretty good and actually got a lot of bad breaks, right? If you looked at the advanced analytics of the 2022 Longhorns, they were like a top 10 team. I mean, it's crazy. If you look at FEI and stuff like that, lost a bunch of close games, played a pretty rigorous schedule. And, it could have gone either way for a few big games. Of course, we know about the Bama game in Austin. There's also TCU, all that, right? The Washington game in the bowl was obviously very competitive, but man, it's the last 2 years have been fantastic. So yeah, it's a short list. I mean, it's what, Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia. Ryan thinks Notre Dame's there now. They might well be.
I think they are. I include them in hanging around the rims because they're always in the talk. And
yeah, you might have said Michigan if they hadn't had this year.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anybody else. Ryan said maybe Bama in a couple years with DeBoer. I still have a lot of faith in DeBoer. People.
Hey, did you see Ryan Grubb is back?
Yeah, that's Alabama. Interesting. That's interesting.
That's been a very good pairing over the years. So I think that's going to be very helpful. I think so. Here, let's have our hot takes early. Yeah. Bama's going to have better quarterback play this year than last year.
Yeah,
I mean, they will. And people are like, who's the quarterback? It's like, doesn't matter. Whoever wins that battle, that guy will put up a bunch of numbers, and you'll see Bama have a very effective passing game, much more effective than last year.
Yeah, because they're naturally being selected by that staff at that point. They're not just an incumbent that you have to shoehorn into your offense.
Yep, and boy, it's so funny too. I mean, I know I get suckered every year. You should never look at any draft board until you're about 3 days out from the actual draft.
Right.
But they've got people are trying to elevate Jalen Milroe back like into the first round, and I don't see it. I know the NFL is quarterback starved, but man.
He does a lot of the really cool things, like the wow things are all there, right? Like the deep ball, which is huge. And then his just insane athleticism. So I get why people like those tools are impressive, but it's kind of like, and I don't want to say it's this, but it's kind of Anthony Richardson-y, where it's like it's very traitsy based, just super freak athleticism and then deep ball delivery, like crazy arm. I'm not comparing past that, but those are kind of the two where it's like you need to watch out there a little bit.
But the structure of the NFL is often you're attacking defenses, you're attacking coverages.
Well,
right?
they're playing too high now, man. You're not getting to throw those
so
shots all day.
Can you throw a 14-yard hitch accurately on time?
Yeah.
And that is the bigger determinant of your success than your 40 time at quarterback. But
well, you see it with Mahomes, man. It's like all these quick RPOs, like getting it out quick, like it's becoming read based, underneath stuff, quick decision making, that kind of stuff. So yeah, even with the cool deep ball and stuff like that, Richardson had more arm talent. Yeah, Richardson has one of the most incredible like traits, pure traits. But
well, we're saying all that, and Jalen Hurts is in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but Hurts mental eval is off the charts. Like he's always like, I think like he's always been smart as hell, super driven. It's the corny, like he squats whatever, but he does squat whatever. It shows that like he's willing to get in the gym and work hard. I think that's where Hurts is a little bit like system quarterback, but I think he's stronger there than, throw it deep type style quarterbacks.
All right. Well, whoever has a running back as good as Saquon Barkley and the offensive line of the Eagles, just draft Milroe. You'll be fine.
Yeah, I do agree he's a system quarterback. I just don't think it's like Milroe style. NFL defenses have adjusted for freak athletes playing quarterback. They fizzle out quick. And it seems like there's a ceiling to that too, right? Like you see what's the classic one, Lamar. And Lamar's not just an athletic quarterback. Lamar's playing quarterback. So we're not talking like 8 years ago when all he could do is run. But just as far as limiting quarterbacks that do have that weapon, if they try to pull it out, is interesting. Milroe is very inconsistent on those throws that are like 5-level difficulty. Can't miss those in the NFL. And he also has very terrible turnovers on tape.
I'm assuming the 5 is on a scale of 1 to 10.
I don't know. What's your scale?
Let us know, Ryan. You got to tell us the scale, man.
Yeah, you got to, and everyone
1 out of 5
on a scale of 1 to 10.
On a scale of 1 to 14.
What do you think about? I've been happy, man. You see Matthew Golden climbing into the first round on mocks, dude.
I'm not surprised,
but that kind of makes me mad. So like, we had a first round receiver talent, and we didn't even know it.
We knew he was the guy down the stretch. That's for sure.
Yeah, but if he's a first round talent, it's like he should have been the guy the whole season. So it's like what? The argument is either this: he wasn't a first round talent, and we coached him up to become one. That's the hopeful argument.
Well, I think there's actually a legitimate argument there.
Exactly.
I mean, at Houston, he was running a very primitive system, and Houston was inconsistent in getting the ball to their receivers. That includes, by the way, Samuel Brown, who went on to play for Miami, the Hurricanes.
Mm-hmm.
Houston had a lot more talent.
They did
2 years ago than people realize. I mean,
they had that man. What was the name? Manshak. He went to like SC or whatever, but they had a good little group of pass catcher.
And 2 defensive tackles that were coveted in the portal. They had a cornerback that was coveted that was a starter for a major team. I can't remember, but that it's very interesting how much talent they had, and then dispersed to the winds. Holgorsen didn't exactly maximize, but 1 through 10. All right, thank you, Ryan. But I agree. By the way, but yeah, I think Texas did help him. I mean, hugely. I mean, that's a great argument for the portal and maximization. That hey, Texas now has a history, wide receivers out there. Listen, of 1-year rentals where we completely changed their career. A.D. Mitchell.
Yep.
And of course now Matthew Golden. That's huge for us, and it's going to be huge for us in the spring as part of our enticement to wide receivers, because that's a great thing to be able to say, hey, we taught you NFL sophisticated offense. These guys executed it, and look what happened at the draft stocks. These guys were, and they both were guys, by the way, that had injury histories, and so we kept these guys healthy. They'd never been healthy their whole career.
Yeah, well, and yeah, that is a good pitch. And it's and Golden said multiple times that this was his first time in a pro style offense, that he wanted to come to Texas to learn how to play the pro style.
He
And then he
did.
does that. And man, he's like watching the all 22 of him, man. He's damn good, man. Like he can run every route. He knows how to set people. Matthew Golden's a wide receiver. Like
Yes.
he's not just a 4-2 guy that's like winning that way. Matthew Golden's a wide receiver that has worked on his craft. He's a technician. He can do it at the NFL level. It's not just because he's fast or has some special cheating trait. He's playing wide receiver, and that's what's important.
And incredible, strong hands, which is very underrated. But the NFL wants to know you can complete the catch because there's no separation in the NFL. And there's a guy hitting the ball as you're catching it, right? So can you keep the ball and secure it, or is it going to be a PBU? The other part is the NFL thinks in analogs, meaning are there players like this in the league succeeding? Yeah. And there's actually been this renaissance of technician wide receivers in the NFL. Not just freaks. Now,
they're all freaks.
They're all freaks.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're not 6'4", 225. I mean, there's A.J. Brown, there's Deebo Samuel. They're just freaks. I get that. But then there's Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's Devontae Smith. There's these guys in the NFL that are medium-sized, not crazy burning fast, not, they don't have these crazy physical traits. They're just good receivers. And they're having this great renaissance. And that's very useful because NFL scouts think in analogs. Like, who is this player comparable to?
Everything's a comp.
And is that player comparable? Is he succeeding in the NFL? And I think they're taking Matthew Golden and saying we can find a bunch of comps just like him who are doing really well in the NFL.
Yeah, and man, him with an NFL quarterback too, like an experienced 5-year NFL quarterback, that'd be awesome because he is routinely winning his routes, and he's not getting the ball because he's whatever in the progression or for whatever reason Quinn doesn't get there, blah blah blah. But if you get to a quarterback that is able to get to there, like he's winning consistently. That's
the part that's so tricky because people are like, oh, this guy's not going to scale up to the NFL. He's not succeeding that much in college. Obviously, Golden succeeded in college, but think about Josh Allen. Like, he'll never scale up to the NFL. He wasn't even that great at Wyoming.
Yep.
Well, turns out NFL receivers and an NFL protection suddenly make Josh Allen a different player.
Yeah. Beyond
his own individual progression. So throwing to NFL receivers is very different from throwing to dudes who got scholarships to Wyoming. Right. So it's suddenly you're not the one leveling up. The guys around you leveling up reveals your true ability.
Yeah.
And that you could actually take advantage of having that huge arm. And so it can cut both ways. Long story short, I'm really excited to see Golden's progression up the draft charts. If he's the first wide receiver taken, that would be phenomenal. What a great story for Steve Sarkisian and his staff to tell to future one-year rentals in the portal.
And he's just a good kid, man. Like his interviews and stuff like that, man. You come in as a mercenary, right? There's no question. But it seemed like he really joined the team, and like bought into that side of it, which as a mercenary can be hard. You're there. Everybody knows why you're there, you know? And so that's what I thought too, is he felt like a team player too, and was able to blend it in the culture. And, that's tough going in your last year when everybody's been around.
Well, and look, the teams that played for the de facto national title in college football, Texas and Ohio State, that was the real title game. They did a great job of bringing in mercenaries and making them Longhorns and Buckeyes. These guys didn't Florida State it.
Right.
They didn't come in and, Matthew Golden wasn't the focal point of the offense early in the year. He was just one of many, right? Honestly, Isaiah Bond was probably
correct. It was Bond going down that led to the discovery of Golden.
Yeah. And we discovered gold. And he didn't whine and go on Twitter about it.
Right. That's important too.
He's just like, I'm going to keep going. And
they keep getting open. You're going to see on all 22 that I'm open.
Exactly. And Ohio State, you got to praise them. They brought in a bunch of dudes, some dudes who had been perceived as toxic in their prior locker rooms, like Quinshon Judkins. And I don't know what kind of citizen he was in Columbus, but I didn't hear anything about him. I didn't read any newspaper headlines about him. And he was in a job chair. So, that ability to have a built-in existing culture and then get the buy-in of the mercenaries so that they actually care about the team and it means something to them. That's very important. And Texas has done that 2 consecutive years at a high level with a bunch of guys that were key to the football team that we brought in.
Yeah.
But Trey Moore, if you ask him, he's like, I'm a Longhorn. Like,
Right.
you know, that's important. And we probably sometimes discount some of that rah-rah stuff. Like,
It
guys
matters.
feel like they belong, but it matters. It really matters.
Yeah, 100%. Golden's 40 time is going to be so important.
As long as he's a 4.5 or under, he'll be fine. I think his separation's on film.
That's what it's like, unless he does some stupid slow thing. But like,
If he's
that's
a
the thing is
4.7,
like,
we got problems.
well, technique, as long as you're in as long as you've met the speed minimum for the NFL, which you do have to meet. But on top of that, he's a technician. So he's setting guys up. He's getting open, not based on his speed, right? It wasn't like and Worthy actually did have good routes, but it's not like just Worthy that can get away from anybody whenever they want type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Worthy was going to test well. I didn't expect him to drop the 40 that he
Yeah,
did.
dude. The
Same with
record
AD
of all-
Mitchell, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. I was
thought
actually,
AD was going to be a 4.53 guy.
dude, I was more surprised by AD than Worthy breaking the record.
Yeah.
That I was like, man, I didn't realize these 4.3 guys. And it's like, man, how fast people are getting. Like the fact that because they're training for the 40 now,
Yeah.
and it's like such a different thing, man. Like it's crazy that we're getting into low 4.2s. Like, what the hell?
Well, the thing about the combine is the questions on the test.
Right.
And a few years ago, a guy named Mike Mamula out of Boston College for the Philadelphia Eagles ended up drafting him in the first round. He was a guy that's perceived like as a 3rd round pick coming in the NFL draft. He had the wild idea of like, I know all the questions on the test. Why don't I train specifically for each one of
Right.
them?
Yeah.
And he did it for like 3 months. And also he was a pretty gifted athlete and he just rocked the combine. I remember it happening.
Yeah.
And he got drafted in the first round because of it. And then ever since then, people have realized like, oh, maybe I should be prepping the actual tests that they're giving. And so they'll bring in track coaches
Mhm.
and they'll just train them. Like, so literally how you come off your foot initially on the 40, how you put your hand down on the, like,
Dude,
all
you
that.
can watch it on YouTube, man. They have all these cameras everywhere.
Yes.
They're like focused on your angle and
How quickly did you come up out of your stance on your first 2 steps? Like,
Yeah.
you need to stay down and low, right? You know, all this sorts of instruction, and it can shave like 1/10 or 2/10 off your 40, your real 40 in pads, you know, playing football.
that's the funny part of the real 40. It's like, first off, guys, in football, you're never coming off the line like that. That's why
No.
I love this style. To me, if I was testing 40s, I would put on shoulder pads and I would make them stand up.
Yeah.
You know, and it's because I don't want to know what your max speed is when you're down in a track stance and to me, it's more interesting to see what it would look like in an actual football context.
I
But
might
really-
make them actually like fire out and there's a dummy directly in front of them.
and move around it.
And they have to like go around like
Yeah.
instant step and then run their 40. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, because it's like that's the funny part is like it correlates if everyone has to do it, right? But we would assume that you're going to lose points immediately whenever you actually have to play football and be that fast. Before we keep going, guys, let's hear a word from Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
So many numbers in that ad.
I know, right? You gotta be writing it down. I thought Golden might be a high 4.3s. Who knows, man? If he's in the lab,
I think he's going to run fine.
oh yeah, I have no problem with his speed. There was never a point where I was like, man, Golden's too slow to get this done. It was awesome. AD Mitchell was the more insane athletic profile. I thought he was a low 4.5. He ran 4.34 with his height, with his ball skills, ability to climb up and get it. Yeah, AD was awesome to watch.
Hey, have you guys in the prior lives talked about Luka Doncic at all?
We talked about it for like 2 minutes yesterday.
Oh my God. So did anyone bring this up? So I knew this from living in the Bay Area for a while. There was this famous agent pitch from Nike to Steph Curry. And this is Steph Curry, not fresh out of Davidson when everyone was like, too small, whatever. This was 5th year Steph Curry, splash brother, like already an NBA All-Star, right?
About to change the game of basketball forever.
He was the most likable and like youth appeal athlete in all basketball for the next decade, right?
Yeah.
And he goes into his Nike pitch, and Steph is he's a baller, like gym rat. I mean, Nike is the dream of every guy. Like, I want to be with Nike because that's Jordan and all that, right? So he goes into the pitch, and the Nike guy calls him Seth through the entire presentation. And on the slides, he didn't bother to change out the slides that he'd used to pitch Kevin Durant earlier. And in fact, Kevin Durant, like, not just has his name in there, but also a picture of Kevin Durant as part of the slide. And the guy's like, oh, I don't know how that got in there. Anyway, that's the presentation. It's a huge disaster. Steph ends up signing with Under Armour, which was a big deal. This is back in 2015.
Yeah, that was a weird move at the time.
It was. And now, but in the Bay Area, we found out about this. You know who that guy was? I think you do.
Yeah, Mavs current GM.
The Mavs current GM. I love that story.
Dude, it still doesn't feel real. Like it's weird. Like it does. It's still. I can't even logically understand it. Like every morning I woke up, I'm like, what is the point of did you see that conspiracy theory that I sent in the group chat that was talking about that it might be some like plan to tank the Mavs for a move to Vegas?
Yes,
because the new owners are want to put in sports gambling. They're casino owners. And so apparently they want to tank the Mavs, lose fan support, and then go to Vegas. I don't know how true it is. But that was the only thing.
You're doing a good job.
Exactly. That's the only thing that makes partial sense, dude. Unless, man, now say Nico does go win it and Luka self-destructs. Incredible foresight. Maybe one of the best moves we've ever seen.
I'll come on here and apologize.
Yeah, but like right now, it's just like I can't even wrap my head around it. I guess that what they're saying is they don't think it was going to work out next year and that they might as well get something now for nothing, but they didn't even really get something.
Well, they didn't shop him to any other team.
That's where the point gets canceled out, man.
Here's the other thing that's wild is that the trade that you've done is bad when everyone reading the initial report is like, that's obviously a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the initial guy who broke it on Twitter, the whole comments are just people going, dude, you're a liar. Like, I hate this. Like, why are you trying to get clout? Like, just shut up. Is this a real account? Like,
and he had to retweet and be like, this is true.
This is true. This is not a prank.
Yeah. Dude, man. That was
all right. I'm sorry for the divergence, but I just thought that was wild.
Yeah, I'm in DFW, so I really enjoy talking about it. I've really enjoyed that. It's brutal. All other fan bases are just like ecstatic right now, dude. I can't even. It makes no sense.
If you're a Dallas sports fan, things are.
It's a hell of a. Where the Cowboys, it's been a hell of a 30 years.
Oh, I'm aware.
But the Mavs are a little different.
It's tough. It's tough,
dude. All right, so we have ESPN renewed the ACC's contract through, I think, the year 2258.
2037.
Yeah, 2037. Who even knows if America will exist in 2037? So let's do it.
We will be a series of city-states.
Yeah, exactly. And so they renewed the deal, which was kind of odd and didn't expect that to happen. But what they're kind of gearing up for here is unequal revenue shares, right? Like the Florida State gets a bigger piece of the pie and the smaller program. So here's the thing. You can argue both sides of this. Whoever's bringing more money to the table, you can go with the merit-based argument. They're bringing more money, so why wouldn't they get more money? What I learned from the soccer leagues when they were trying to create not the Super League incident, but what they do with their teams, that it's caused a lot of issues when they go unequal. It just kind of breaks apart leagues. And so they've kind of created this system where they do equal just because they've learned from not doing equal share what happens. So I see the argument for both here. But it's going to be interesting because once you go unequal, you're going to create resentment in the league, period. So that's
I mean, look, ultimately the main cause of instability in a league, though, is equal revenue sharing.
Well, that's the problem. It seems like both sides, right? Because then if you're equal, your top performers are disgruntled.
Yes.
If you're unequal, your bottom performers are disgruntled. So it's like, who do you want to be mad here? You probably want the ones that don't have much power to be more. You get what I'm saying?
Well, I'll say this to be cruel and bottom line. One thing I learned pretty quickly, being a biotech manager in charge of Northern California, Nevada, and Hawaii, and Oregon, was that the time you spent with your good reps resulted in more sales. And the time you spent with your bad reps, I don't mean young or new reps that you're trying to train, I mean just reps that aren't very good, was usually wasted.
Well, it's that whole concept of like, you want to double down on your strengths, not always try to.
The Pareto principle is
right.
real in many areas and facets of life. So, you can try to pump up Wake Forest with equal payouts, and look, they're getting big payouts. They're going to they redid their facility. Now they're.
But how has that worked? We've done this model.
Well, you're still Wake Forest,
right?
So, the fact is, Texas was the great provider for the Big 12. Not that the Big 12 appreciated it or
at all, man.
But Texas had equal revenue shares with the Big 12, and Texas was. I mean, as I was arguing, and has now been proven true by actual TV ratings when the test case happened, Texas was responsible for all of the TV sets in the Big 12. And absent Texas, the Big 12 just disappeared from the TV ratings except for a couple of Colorado games. So,
and there's no long-term longevity in that because Deion's going to leave.
But while the Big 12 was getting equal revenue sharing, Iowa State, Baylor, all these different schools, Kansas redid their football facilities, redid their stadiums. They had money, they had all that stuff. And you know what? The TV sets go away. Texas goes away. The marquee games go away. No one cares. Yeah. So that's the hard reality of it. In any event, we could argue that stuff all day. The point is the ACC realized to be viable, to survive, they need to probably give unequal revenue shares to the teams at the top. And that's what they're going to do. And also ESPN, I think they don't want more realignment right now. So they got what they wanted.
They're in a weird spot because Bob Iger at Disney was talking about they might have to offload their cable channels. They might have to sell ESPN. So they're in a weird spot there too.
They think they can realize more value in individual properties.
Okay.
Because live sports are still the only thing that provides real eyeballs to an antiquated advertising model, which people are still adhering to.
It's the only way you can get people somewhere at 7 p.m.
People are still pretending like TiVo and DVRs don't exist. And you can convince Fortune 500 companies to spend $100 million ad campaigns on Jaguar, where the people you least want to sit next to on a 5-hour flight are like, I am disinterested and I'm walking with a paintbrush through a museum, whatever. Now I want to buy a Jaguar, The old advertising model is dead, but no one's told like most of corporate America. And so live sports are the only way you can get eyeballs on commercials. And that's just the reality of it. So they're getting overvalued. And that's why the Big 12, partly the inability to properly evaluate Texas leaving and OU leaving. I don't think they actually understood the impact on TV sets. I can promise you Fox and ESPN are not delighted with the Big 12's TV contract right now. What they're
and also too, when Deion leaves, right? You don't even have Colorado that's going to be able to pop into the top 20. It's like they're going to have absolutely nothing as far as top viewership when Deion leaves.
They need to pray that Arizona State keeps up their
run,
their little like lovable program vibe. And we've got to find some other emergent teams that are telegenic and interesting. And they got to get some Travis Hunters in the Big 12. But ultimately, that's going to be a problem for them. And the Big 12 contract is up in 6 years. So it was a short contract. And that's why Brett Yormark has been scrambling feverishly to try to add power basketball schools. Like he's trying to find alternate revenue streams. That's why he's talking to VC firms. Like, it would be the most Yormark move to do a big deal with a vulture capitalist get paid out, get a big buyout personally, leave in like 2029.
Right.
And then when the TV contract comes up, everyone's like, no one watches this. We're not,
Yeah.
we'll give you 10 million a team, whatever.
Yeah.
It'd be
Well,
hilarious.
and just the market too. I mean, like, what are you buying in the Big 12, right? Because it used to be you were buying Texas, the University of Texas, so that you get a Texas market. That's huge, right?
Yeah.
But it's like Baylor doesn't carry the market. TCU doesn't carry. Like, where are the eyes coming from? Arizona doesn't have a ton of sets. Iowa, Kansas, like Colorado's able to do it, but that's not because of Colorado. That's because of Dion.
So what Colorado is drawing is actually passive national interest.
Yeah.
So what you're looking for when you're looking for TV, like these powerful brands like Texas, like Ohio State, like Georgia, you want to dominate their home market where there's a bunch of people. A bunch of people live in Georgia. A bunch of people live in Texas, and they're fervent about football. So you capture that home market, and then you pick off elevated interest in New Jersey, in Ohio, in North Dakota. Random television sets go, oh, Texas, Georgia. This is good football. I'll watch this game.
Yeah.
Colorado's on. Oh, I hate Dion. Oh, I love Dion.
Right.
Okay, and Travis Hunter. Oh, awesome. I want to watch that guy. So you get a guy in, freaking Piscataway, New Jersey, and that adds incrementally to your overall viewership. The Big 12 doesn't have anyone, to your point, Connor, that has a national passive viewership. And then they don't have regional TV sets because they lost the state of Texas.
Right.
And people are like, well, TCU delivers DFW. No, they don't.
They don't. They've never carried DFW.
Texas, number one.
Yep.
Texas A&M. OU. Then TCU, SMU, Baylor, blah, 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 and DFW. Same thing for Houston. The University of Houston does not dominate the Houston market.
Right.
Texas A&M actually closer there.
Yeah.
And then you got probably number 3, random best SEC game.
Yeah.
Probably Tennessee, Florida.
Maybe LSU.
Maybe LSU. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just going to the next best SEC game that's on. Oh, Auburn's playing Vanderbilt. Oh, I like Diego Pavia. I'll watch this game.
That's also why I don't get mad at the SEC cult mentality, because it does that. Like, if we're like SEC, you get these kind of waterfall viewership where the person is, I'll just watch the next SEC game, opposed to let's go watch Colorado or whatever the shiny object is. So that's what I do like, actually, annoyingly, about the SEC is that kind of diehard of like, I'll watch bad team versus bad team as long as it has this logo on it.
It's fervor. And so what the SEC has 2 things going for it. Fervor, meaning within our population, we maximize interest. And then secondly, everyone's moving to the South and to Texas for demographic and economic and tax reasons.
Yeah.
And so that's why I always laugh at the Pac-12 idiots. Like, I'm a hobbyist and I knew more about and understood realignment better than all the consultants the Pac-12 hired.
Yeah.
To include their ADs, their conference presidents. Like, these idiots went to a professor at Arizona State who convinced them that Stanford and Cal were more valuable properties than Ohio State and Texas because of the TV markets they sat in.
Yeah.
And it's like, fervor is what you have to capture. It's not the number of theoretical eyes.
Or past glory.
Yeah, or he was also citing like Olympic sports. I mean, like, these are people who literally don't know anything.
Right.
So chalk it up to another group of experts taking a giant L. And it ultimately led to the death of the Pac. It literally ended a conference.
Yeah.
Because their advice was so bad, so disconnected from reality.
Yeah,
so
you got everyone poached. And then all the teams that did survive, not all of them, but the remainers had to take awful deals where they don't even get to participate like in their conferences fully.
Yeah, I mean, only like the Oregons and the USCs thrived, but Stanford and Cal are on like half rations.
Exactly. They have to take bad deals.
SMU doesn't get paid for 9 more years.
Yeah, and these are smart schools. These are smart schools. You would think they would have used that intelligence to not end up in that situation.
Well, they did, because they literally all these smart people literally didn't understand any of this.
Yeah.
Like a 1-hour Zoom call with me and a subscription to Inside Texas, and they would have made much better decisions.
The IT consulting.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. Freelance Society asks, will Derek Williams start if healthy Folks were saying he was a 3-year player and then the NFL. Move McDonald to nickel and Jalen to corner. Thoughts?
That is possibly in the works. We got to see how Derek Williams is recovering. And the spring will be interesting in that regard. I think they're going to shield him and then hope to like sort of target his recovery for July and August, right? Like then we're going to run real reps and see if we got him. If he's full Derek Williams, I'd start him at safety with Taft. Now that makes a lot of sense. And then you cannot take Jelani McDonald off the field. He's in your starting 5.
Yeah.
So I don't, if it's at, he might be a better safety than Williams, but if you think Williams playing at safety makes for a better overall secondary, then you can drop Jelani to nickel and then you can play Jalen out at corner. Ian and I have been talking about that. I'm not convinced on Jalen Gilbo to corner. I thought Jahdae Barron was going to be great at corner, and I didn't understand the people who thought he wouldn't. But Gilbo, I don't know about his pure foot speed. And I know people are like, well, don't play him at field corner. We do play our safeties back. He's got to cover. I get all that. He doesn't make a lot of plays on the ball. And he's been the same steady player for 3 years. So you're really expecting him to make this big breakout. And I don't know. I hope he does, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, get your best 5. However it works, man, but make sure Jelani's in there. But just however it goes. I do need to look more. I'm going to watch some all 22 of Jalen and try to get a feel for him.
Yeah.
Because I haven't watched him specifically. Jalen, when I watch him, it's because he made a play or didn't make a play, and that's not a fair way to evaluate a player.
That's a great point. I just think he's been, with incremental differences in experience and all that, I think he's been about the same player since he was a freshman.
I agree with you because the coaches immediately were talking about Jalen, and that's because he was showing really early at freshman. But it's like it feels like there hasn't been a huge jump. Yeah, it feels kind of flat. So that's what we got to see.
Colin Simmons from game 1 to like game 4,
it's straight up. There's no slope. There's no slope.
His curve is a Viagra commercial.
Yeah, it's just right there. And so but that's what the coaches do have a good history too of like whenever player needs to take that jump, doing it. Paul, who's the best mortgage man in the land?
Gabe Winslow. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Hey, speaking of numbers, write these numbers down. 832-557-1095. What is that? Are those coordinates?
Yeah, to find the best mortgage guy ever.
It is. It's coordinates that you
telephonically.
You put it into your cell and he picks up, and then this guy helps you out. He's the best at what he does, over 20 years in the industry, really sharp guy, has a law degree, exceptional at what he does. And things are shaking and moving in the housing market right now. We're having some economic movement, and we could see interest rates further decline. And even if interest rates formally don't decline, that doesn't necessarily link to the mortgage market. There's a good chance that we see some movement there. Even if we don't, this is the guy you want to get because he's going to shop your deal to 70 different lenders. He's going to negotiate on your behalf, and he's going to get the best possible rate. Go to Big Bank 101. You get one guy. He works about 4.5 hours a day, and he doesn't care about you because he's got a bunch of other customers, and he's going to shop you to exactly one outfit. And that one outfit isn't particularly incentivized to give you the best deal. Give Gabe a call. 832-557-1095.
Gabe. We have some we got some good haterism going here.
Big
Roger
12
says,
ass.
He ponders for a second. The Big 12 is just ass. Can't believe Texas played in that league. It's weird watching how weak it is. So what is interesting is I thought whenever we left the Big 12, I liked the league, man. I thought it was fun. I thought the coaches were fun. Not compared to the SEC. Let's go there. But I did have some warm fuzzies for the league. I thought I would watch it, and I didn't. I thought I would too. After our game, I'll tune into a Kansas State. I did watch a couple Colorados because I'm that passive fan, I guess. But that was the weird part is I thought maybe there was going to be some leftover like, hey man, what is Iowa State doing? And I just didn't all year. It was weird.
I watched a couple of games that I bet on, but even then I was like switching around. I was just like popping in, checking in on the score, seeing how Sawyer Robertson was playing, whatever. And then, the Shapen replacement. Connor doesn't like anyone who replaced Blake Shapen. But
what's the biggest mistake in sports? Over Luka's trade.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I didn't watch it. I didn't have any affection. By the time we left, I didn't have any affection for that league. I was ready to get out. If you read my Thinking Texas Football preview, I wrote an essay about goodbye to the Big 12, and it's not classy.
I felt like
not wishing them good, wishing them well.
I felt like a parent with a teenager. I'm like, they're ungrateful and they don't know what we do for them, and that's what it felt. But I remember like when I would talk to my SEC friends or Big Ten friends that do content creation, I would like have to fight. I'd be like, man, these coaching matchups are interesting. And they're like, oh, whatever, man. Like, we're not, and so, but I get it because it's so inconsequential, right? Like they weren't anywhere in like the top 10 or like relevant in the real fight until the end, and their top guys like 16th, and it's Arizona State. But like, there's no like you're like, all right, BYU's at 9 or like whatever. It wasn't like how you're mapping Georgia or Ohio State or like in that top 4 moving around.
Yeah.
It's also kind of too, it's like, man, let me know when the season's over and who's the last man standing because they're all beating each other. So it's also kind of that thing. They don't have like this clear front runner. He was top 4 in the nation. They stayed top 4.
Well, speaking of front runner, I realized my viewing habits are entirely SEC and Big Ten.
I know that's what it's becoming for me too.
And I'm more likely to watch like an interesting G5 game.
Me too. Yeah.
I'm more likely to watch UNLV Boise State
at 12:15 at night.
Yeah. Than watch, Colorado Baylor or whatever.
Yeah. Which is weird, man, because I didn't think it was going to be like that. But now I kind of see it when I was talking to other fan bases because I was like, man, y'all are just like snobbish or whatever. But then I realized it's just like there's not a lot of good stakes here. Like, let us know who gets 18th in the country when it's all said and done. Arizona State, I think, will be kind of interesting.
Well, here's my thought. You talk about conspiracy theories, and I've got my yarn board and all sorts of stuff up. Yeah. If Venables gets fired, which is a very real possibility if he has a bad year this year.
Dude, he's cut off the heads of how many coordinators? The only man left in the kingdom. He's played the power games all wrong. You leave guys below you, man. And he's already cleared. The only one that's left standing is him. There's no one else to fire.
Well, he doesn't understand you got to do the DC 1 year.
Exactly, dude. You don't do that in the same year, man. There's levels to it.
They're going to start looking at you.
Exactly.
You're going to read the org chart and be like, hey.
I think there's one guy that's
making Venables.
Yeah, exactly.
Charge. But anyway, my fear is that Arizona State has another good year, and then OU goes and gets Kenny Dillingham.
That would be not great because I like that guy, man.
So here's what I want to happen. I want Arizona State to have a poor year.
Tank his stock.
Politically
untenable.
OU has to hire Lee Corso.
Yeah.
And then Kenny Dillingham in 2026 goes like 13-1 and goes to the quarterfinals again because he had that one reload year.
You wanted to make it so Joe Seek doesn't have the political backing to hire him because he has a down year. Man, whenever he got that raise and then immediately gave it to his staff too, it's like, man, he's doing the right things, man.
I think he may just be like, he may just see it, that guy. Like, he may just get football at a different level than other coaches. And that's he'd be scary. I mean, look, OU, we want them to wander in the woods for as long as possible because the more you do, the more desperate, stupid stuff you do.
Exactly. The worse you get, the worse you get.
The worse you get, the worse you get. Thank you. Let's get the old advice of like, hey, when you're committing a crime, don't commit another crime.
Right. Exactly. Stop when you're ahead.
If you're carrying a gun and you just killed a guy, don't jump the turnstile.
Right.
Don't speed. Don't go 90 on the highway.
Yep.
Don't commit a crime while you're committing a crime. When you're bad, don't interrupt your opponent because they're going to do worse.
Right.
And OU particularly, I think, look, Texas football is very important to us. I don't think the average person understands how important OU football is to Oklahoma, the school.
Oh, it's huge, man. Just culturally, man.
It's like the draw. It's the thing. It it's the galvanizing tool of the whole community and the state. They don't have a NFL team. They have the Thunder and OU. That's
Right.
it. And so if they're screwing up, they're going to screw up worse. You don't want them to have that quick corrective hire of like, no, that Venables messed up. We're back.
Yeah, cut bait.
So we'll see. But, I will say that there are some developments that are being underplayed, which is now that everyone's paying players, your willingness to pay players before is not a differentiating mechanism.
Right.
And, Shane Gillis famously commented on that game day with Nick Saban when he called him Alabama Jones.
Saban's the greatest coach, but the hero worship of Saban is weird. He's like a cult figure where it's like he'll say the most basic stuff. He said, remember in that NFL interview, he was like, man, he was talking about Caleb Williams recently, and he was like, man, with a young quarterback, you wanted to give him some time to learn the system and process. And then we had all these football guys like, man, Saban, what a genius. It's like, guys, this is 5th grade level football. Like anything he says. But on the flip side, it's this thing of like, look, Saban comes back from the NFL where he watches a bunch of paid players. He comes back, magically assumes this incredible roster with quite an interesting business empire of local car dealerships, stakes in banks, an interesting network of which money could probably flow freely without noticing.
No children's hospitals?
Yeah, and so it's like, guys, we know how he did it. And we also know his tree and how they learned how to do it. And so it's like, that's the interesting thing too, of like this concept that Alabama was all clean, or that they were the only one doing it. But his model.
I'll say this, just like their football program under Saban, they were a more sophisticated version than everyone else.
1,000%.
Tennessee stuffing money into freaking Chick-fil-A bags.
McDonald's, dude.
Oh, sorry.
It wasn't even that high.
Auburn is like just giving $400,000 to a tiny church because Cam Newton's dad is a pastor.
Exactly.
I mean, like, there's ways to do this. Alabama has like accounts and like it's like structured and there's a contract and it says you don't talk about us if you transfer. Yep. You don't get the money unless you're here X amount of time. If anyone breaks confidentiality, we're coming after you. Like, they did it in a very sophisticated way, just like Saban constructed his team like an NFL team, right? So, but it kind of gets back to what we were talking about, like the appeal of the NFL to some college coaches, which is, it is a sense of we all have pretty equal resources. Let's see who the better coach is.
Right.
And Saban in the NFL was forgettable. And so you bring him up and there are NFL coaches and NFL personnel guys who will kind of shrug and be like,
couldn't do it here.
Couldn't do it here. And, that's always the interesting thing where coaches, and that's the thing we most have to worry about with Sark. I always laugh when people are like, oh, what if Ohio State becomes open? And I'm like,
it's the NFL.
It's irrelevant. Or people are worried about Bama. Like, I was like, Sark's not going to Bama. Like, what are you drunk?
Also, they all have the same agent, guys. So they all get this. Dude, I've never seen an agent. First off, I don't even know if there's antitrust laws in agents because that's incredible what he's able to do.
Also, if you're a younger guy up and coming, I wouldn't want the guy who's managing all the other coaches to be my agent.
If you notice,
he's not going to represent my interests.
He's not. He's just circling around and getting everyone paid. So it's like every job that came open, for like Oregon, it would be the same 5 candidates, and then they'd all be his.
Yeah,
and he would just get everyone a raise, and it's great in that regard. But it's such. I've never seen such an artificial market be able to go completely unchecked.
Yeah, but I would say Texas fans, the thing you need to worry about is NFL jobs, not other college jobs.
Because here's
Sark does have that thing in him of like,
there's a prestige thing. So
here's do it at the highest level. But
that's what fans I hear they'll constantly.
I don't think he'll go till he wins a national championship or 2.
That's what I feel like. Fans will always tell me like automatically that they're like, man, he gets paid more here or whatever. There's a certain scale. Once you've done that, once you've made the money, it doesn't really feel that different making $2 million more. And there's some ego, right? These are coaches leading young men into battle every Saturday. There's some ego here. And so it's like, if he knows that I've felt emotionally like I've maxed out or I'm limiting myself at the college ranks and I want to go be mentioned as a Shanahan, as a McVay, that's what you have to worry about. It's not necessarily all these little things like the money and that kind of stuff. It's does Sark want to be mentioned in that group? That's the tricky part. Fans really never look at that angle. They're like, it's money. Why would you leave here? You have XYZ. It's like, because you want to be known as the best competing at the highest level. Is OU going to be the new Vandy of the SEC?
No.
No. I wish, but no. What do you think of the new quarterback?
Like, look up all-time wins, 10 national championships, Heisman Trophy winners. Like OU's a big deal. They're not going to become Vandy.
Sark
But
wants to have
could they have a long Auburn kind of decade where they go,
or an us kind of decade is what decade? Yeah, it's like that's what we want.
Yeah.
What happened to us? Sark wants to have a say control. Will he have that with an NFL team? So
depends on the structure of the NFL team.
This is the thing. It depends on Sark won't just take any job, which is important, right? He's not taking any NFL job. It's going to have to be important. The quarterback's probably going to have to be relevant, that kind of stuff. But also there's this wave you've seen too, and it kind of cancels out my argument because Chip immediately went. Well, no, it doesn't actually. It helps my argument. So Chip has this control as a head coach. It's a lot, man. There's a lot of stress. These coaches are working stupid hours. It affects their personal lives. It's weird. A little less control might not be a bad thing. And also not recruiting might not be a bad thing. Like, dude, what they're having to do on the road, we have this assumption that like everyone wants more control. We've actually seen a trend of coaches kind of realize like, I make a lot of money. I'm not a happy person at all.
Yeah.
You know, so like, hey man, if I don't have to recruit on the weekends, I have a normalized schedule. I can see my wife, my kids. We're kind of seeing this trend too. So like more control equals more hours, and coaches are getting burnt out left and right.
I mean, if you had told Joe Gibbs and Dick Vermeil in the 1980s or early 90s, college coaches are going to be working much harder than you guys, they would have burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And pointed to the cot in their office.
Right.
And been like, I sleep there 5 nights a week. College coaches work harder than NFL coaches right now.
Dude, it's crazy. Like the coaches are having to pick like 6 days they can all year to go to Cancun. And then it's like right back into it.
That's it.
That's
right. So the coaches voted unanimously, I don't know if you saw this, to limit the portal to 1 session. Right. The problem is the law says we don't care what you want. A player, you don't own this player. He could transfer whenever he feels like it.
Right.
The portal is just a concept. I mean, a court just basically upheld that players can transfer whenever they feel like it.
Yeah. Well, I have a question too. Do you think some of the football culture is nonsense and machismo? Like it feels to me, if we had more efficient systems, it could be an 8-hour day, but there's something about saying I work 12 hours that seems to be in the profession that it's a little bit antiquated of like wanting to say you work 12 hours. Now, if you're recruiting, I get it, man. If you have workouts at 6, you got to be there at 5, you know, so there's some actual, like we've stretched out the day so much, you almost have to be there. But I do feel like a little bit of it is just so you can say you work a lot.
You know, maybe, but the problem is you just have so many stakeholders.
Yeah.
You've got to shake down alums for NIL. You've got to meet with your own staff and personnel. You've got to coach your team. And ultimately, the truth is in football, if you do watch more film than the other guy and you're able to teach, you'll have an advantage on Saturday. And coaches are so paranoid about
they're so paranoid
not having like, did I do everything? Like, yeah. And that's a tough thing, man. You know, but I also not many people have jobs where there's like a showtime, like
entertainment jobs. You got to go on stage at 6, and
that's what I'm like. You got to bring it, like the way we're bringing it in this live session. I don't think you guys understand the level of preparation that went into this. He texted me yesterday and said, "What do you want to talk about?" Yeah. And I texted back 3 hours later, "Leave me alone." And then he said, "But seriously." And then I ignored him. And then we signed on about 3 minutes before the hour. And
I was up all night, man. I was doing 14-hour days, dude.
But you kind of get my point. Like coaches are literally in front of their friends, family, national. Like, have you ever had to perform?
Millions? You're in front of millions, and you're scared. In reality, there's fear driving. You don't want to get embarrassed. Man.
No.
Yeah.
Like are you familiar with Fight Night?
Yeah.
Okay, so I fought in Fight Night at Texas.
Oh, for real?
When you fight in front of like 3,000 people and your friends, like you don't want to get your ass beat in front of your friends.
Right.
And a bunch of strangers. There's a bunch of like cute girls. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now scale that to 20 million.
That's what I'm saying. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, the feeling of like finally winning and like, oh, I didn't feel like victory. I just was like relieved. Like, oh,
Yeah, it's about when they say losing feels worse than winning feels good.
it's true.
And that's what that's driving them. But also, here's my argument. So you have this obsession, right? You don't want to get embarrassed. But also, maybe that 8 hours of sleep restores you better than half-ass watching tape at 1. You get what I'm saying?
So long term, are you going to have a heart attack? And are you going to get divorced? Right. And your wife's going to have an affair if you're working 90-hour weeks? Yes.
Yeah.
But no one's concerned with the long term or your long term health. I mean,
Yeah.
so think about football culture more broadly, Connor. Is football a safe sport?
No.
No. The appeal of football is that's inherently unsafe. The appeal to me of football, boxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all these sports is they're not safe.
Yeah.
So you have that carryover, that mentality to coaching, which is, yeah, I could have a heart attack, but I'll sleep when I die. And it's like, hey, man, you might reevaluate that when your kids don't know your name, but you get so focused on the prize, right?
Yeah, and that's what I think is just so weird about football culture. It's like, man, you're sacrificing a lot. You know, I just feel like and also if you could put structures on it, like everyone would cheat. That's the problem.
It's like OPEC.
Exactly.
OPEC is like, oil is going to be $150 a barrel. And everyone in OPEC is like, yes, we agree. The Saudis, the Venezuelans, everybody. And then the Venezuelans immediately after the meeting are like, hey, pump up production.
Yeah.
These guys are going to hold oil at 150. It's like
that is
everyone cheats a little, and then all of a sudden the embargo falls apart.
Exactly. Yeah, and that you're right. Yeah, as soon as we did, even if they all agreed, then they'd be like, well, the way to get the edge is to stay.
The only time that embargo has ever held was in the early 1970s for like 2.5 years, back when we had like gas lines and stuff and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was alive then. Maybe I was like 0 years old. But yeah, I mean, they can't help themselves.
It is true. And it's like so built in, dude, especially at the college level. Feels like there's like just this get an edge culture. Paul simplifies complex talk. Great teacher skill. He does.
Appreciate
that. That is an important skill of Paul's. All right.
Hey, you were talking about the Saban thing. Yeah. It made me laugh. And people are like, oh, he said the quarterback has to play well.
Dude, it's like he says the most basic stuff, and everyone's like, here's 50 retweets of like why he's the most brilliant guy.
It made me laugh because we did a live a few weeks ago, and in the comments, someone was like, oh, Paul's point about this was amazing. And you had made the point, and then I had just sort of jumped on and been like, yeah, that sounds about right. And I made a quick analogy. And then someone was like, but you had developed the entire theme and like made the point and actually triggered something in me to like offer a quick summation in like 10 seconds.
But I think the distillation matters too.
Like, oh, Scipio does it again. Like,
dude,
no, that's not what happened.
It's but you're good at that, man. You're able to distill these kind of things that are, and also to relate OPEC to overworking and college football.
And cheating.
That's what the people are paying for.
That's what the people are paying to get comps between college football and international oil cartels.
Exactly. And you can get more of that, guys, on InsideTexas.com. High-level analogies always over there. We appreciate you guys for hanging out. Paul, we appreciate you as well. And hook 'em, everybody.
Hook 'em, y'all.